Continuing our conversation with the candidates here on AM Quincy as we lead up to the November 4th general election here in Quincy. There is a race for the Ward 1 City Council seats. Incumbent Dave McCarthy facing a challenge from another Dave, David Jacobs, who's here in studio to tell us all about his story. Dave, great to see you, meet you. Thanks for coming over.
Yeah, Joe, it's so nice to be here. As I said earlier, long-time listener, first-time caller, right?
Thank you.
This is my first time on with you, yeah.
Very good. So for folks who aren't aware, who is Dave Jacobs?
Well, I just want to start off by saying, I'm running to bring, good public service, back to the city council. I grew up here in Quincy.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up here in Quincy, in Housneck. I'm fifth generation of my family to grow up and live in Housneck, so we've been there a really long time. My kids are the sixth. I am a father of two. My wife Alice and I live on Charles Street in Housneck, which is just basically right across the street from the Atherton Howe Elementary School. And we moved there back in 2016, 2017.
Okay.
Oh, actually, maybe it was more like, no, so actually 2018, sorry. So around 2018, got married in 2017.
Congratulations.
And, it's funny, when we moved into the house, I remember when that house was built. And it was kind of an interesting thing because the neighbors, my parents, didn't want that house to be built, but that's how those things go. You fight something and then, 25 years later, you own that thing.
Sure.
So it is kind of interesting. But so I lived 2 doors over from the house that I grew up in.
Wow.
So that's fun. My twin brother, Dan, lives there now, so we're close. His
Still in
kids
the
are close
family?
with her. Yeah, so we're all close.
So deep roots in the neck, it sounds like.
Continuing that tradition,
Yeah.
yeah. So we have other, extended family members that also have been living in Housneck for a long, long time.
Very nice, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an important part of your life, it sounds like.
It definitely is.
Yeah. Is that the reason you're running for Ward 1 City Council?
There's, again, like I said, I want to bring good public service back to Quincy. I feel like, after attending zoning board meetings over the years and, listening to city council meetings, I just feel like that they're a little out of touch, like with the people who live, not just in Ward 1, but in Quincy. And I think that people who serve in office for a long time can sometimes get complacent. And, it's not geared towards any one person. It's just, every year I'm a subscriber to the Quincy Sun, and I think most people in Quincy should be. It's a great place to get news, also QATV. But, when you look at annually they put out around the 4th of July, they have the historic Quincy edition.
Yes.
They put in, the pictures of the people, some of them are the same people as when I was a kid. And, so I jokingly say that, I'm like, this is the same cast of characters. You might see one or two move into a different position, but it's the same cast of characters 20 years later.
Elected officials, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the same people, yeah. Just I'm 39 years old, I'm almost 40. Just in my lifetime, there's only been, 4 mayors of Quincy. So I feel like that's kind of not a lot.
Okay.
I feel like, and there hasn't really been a lot of, challenging along the way. And I'm, even city councilors, in Ward 1, when I was a kid, I remember, Peter Colson was, he lived down in Germantown. He was a city councilor, and then Greg Hanley was city councilor after him, and then Leo Kelly came back. I know he was probably city councilor when I was a little kid.
Back when, yeah.
Yeah, and then then we had Margaret. Now we have so we don't really have a lot. It's the same people.
Okay. All right. Is this your first run at elective office?
I ran for school committee 8 years ago.
I thought so. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was back in 2016 maybe.
Okay.
I can't remember, but different time. This is obviously a different race.
Right.
That was an interesting race. Came in 5th place out of 6. Yeah, so it was interesting though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Took a step back, and now you're back trying to run for Ward 1.
Yeah.
Why, Dave?
Well, I feel like my background
Which
really,
is?
I feel like my background really is helpful. So I'm a school teacher.
Okay.
I have been for a long time. I went to college, went to Salem State.
Okay.
From North Quincy High School, grad class of 2005. and went to Salem State to become a teacher. Graduated during the recession. Graduated in 2008. So not a great time to.
Towns were laying off teachers.
Yeah, not a great time to go into employment. But while I was going to college, I actually worked for the National Park Service.
Okay.
I worked when I was in high school. I volunteered at the Adams Houses. The woman who ran the park, the day-to-day operations, Caroline Kyneth.
Sure.
Who's retired now, but super friendly, super helpful. Helped me to get in to be a volunteer. They had the federal government used to have a student intern program. So when I went to college, got a job at Saugus Ironworks in Salem Maritime, National Historic Sites. Worked there as a blacksmith, as a wheelwright. Did some at the Saugus Ironworks. Did all kinds of things. Ran the water wheels, made nails. Made hooks, rings, and other things,
Really?
as I like to say. Mowed the lawn.
Really?
Chased geese. All those things. Cleaned pathways.
Sure.
Started fires, tended fires, did tours, ran the visitor center. So those are all, I feel like, things that lend themselves. The national parks are almost like little towns in themselves. When I worked in Salem in the wintertime, worked in a major visitor center. They have the regional visitor center for the Essex National Heritage area up there. Hundreds of thousands of people, on a weekend. So again, good customer service right there. Then I actually went on to, I graduated from Salem State. And I actually went on and did the program for the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center.
Okay.
To become a law enforcement ranger for the National Park Service.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so I did that. I went from Salem Maritime to Badlands National Park in South Dakota.
Wow.
I did law enforcement, would be considered more front country law enforcement. Had a police cruiser, pulled people over for speeding.
I see, okay.
We did some backcountry stuff, like the park ranger naturalist would go out into the wilderness area. It's dangerous out there. They were doing, I should say, a wilderness enclosure where they were trying to get a handle on like the natural grasses. So we went out one year and fenced off like a football-sized field of grass, but they had to fly everything in with a helicopter. We backpacked out there, and we had put some bison in there. We're trying to just kind of see what was going on. And then the next year we went out and took that stuff down. And I went as a law enforcement officer for the protection of the workers who are out there in the wilderness area. Yeah.
Okay.
Also worked on a fire crew for the National Park Service. A lot of wildfires out there in the grasslands. Did a lot of controlled burns, but also had to do maintenance stuff. Worked on a pothole crew. Kind of have an understanding of that. Public safety services are very far away out there. Badlands National Park is about the size of Rhode Island.
Okay.
So it's almost like a state in itself. So we'd be the only people on call. I remember I answered a call one night from the South Dakota Highway Patrol on I-90. Lost motorcyclist, went out, found that person. But, they were like, oh, the state trooper is at mile marker, like 291. Where's this person? 63. How many state troopers you got working tonight? Statewide, 3.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So
Big
it is
area to cover, yeah.
Big area to cover. So but I have a lot of experience in doing, different types of work that municipalities, like that's their bread and butter. Is doing DPW, is doing law enforcement, is doing, fire protection, things like that.
Yeah. It seems like though that background would have led you down that path continually to maybe law enforcement or National Park Service or a park ranger, but how did you transition to teaching?
Yeah, so what happened is, I went to school to be a teacher.
Right.
That's what actually I was doing. I went from the Badlands to Nebraska, and then I worked at Dry Tortugas in Florida. And then that was around 2013, 2014.
Okay.
Came home, went to grad school, decided I was going to go back to graduate school, and I found a job teaching, and that's what I always wanted to do, and so that's what I had to do. And then while I was doing that, I went back and worked at the Adams Houses for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so came back home.
Okay.
Worked for the National Park Service at the Adamses.
So that's still a passion of yours.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. I tell people like I worked at the Badlands, and while I was at the Badlands, I also worked at Mount Rushmore because it was just 90 miles away. But my family would come out and visit me, and my friends, And my girlfriend at the time said to me when I came back to Quincy, and wasn't from here, but when I went to the Adams houses, she went and toured, and she goes, you know what? Of all the places you've worked, this is the most important place that I've ever seen.
Okay.
So I mean,
you realize the importance.
Yeah.
Of
Well,
the
so
Adams
she
family.
realized, they realized, because they would, my family would visit all these places, and then they're like, this really is like a very important place, and in the Park Service we would talk about destination parks, right? So like, Mount Rushmore is a destination park, right? The Badlands, big park, not really a destination. It's somewhere people go to when they're going to Mount Rushmore, right?
Yep.
We're very lucky here in Quincy. Adams National Historic Park actually is a destination park. Like, people come here just to see that. It's not something that they're necessarily doing on their way to someplace else. Like, they might be coming here, like to see Boston or whatever, but they come out to Quincy because they actually want to see the resource that we have. It's not a passive thing. It's very active.
Yeah, they're interested in history, obviously,
Yep.
and have a passion for it. I'm sure the HBO miniseries didn't hurt either. But tell me about your teaching career, Dave.
Yeah, so I started off teaching actually in Quincy during the recession.
Public schools?
Yep, Quincy Public Schools.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a sub at Quincy High for many years, subbed in, all the schools in Quincy. But there's a recession. There were no jobs. Traveled for the Park Service, but then I came back and got a job after graduate school. Got a job in Boston, working with students with severe disabilities. Did that for 7 years.
Really?
Yep, and then I've been in Holbrook.
Okay.
The last couple of years.
Public schools?
Yeah, Holbrook Public Schools.
Okay.
Yeah, and I teach 7th grade science.
Okay.
To all of the kids. I'm the only 7th grade science.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So how does all of this experience and background that you've had translate into wanting to be an elected official for Ward 1?
Yeah, so, when you watch city council meetings, sometimes I feel like, the elected officials, they might not actually have the experience of doing these things on the ground. They're asking questions about it, and they're asking some good questions, but they don't actually have the experience of doing that. You might be relying on just what they hear from somebody else, but having actually done most of these things and been the person on the ground, I feel like that I have more an insight on what's going on.
Okay. So what's going on in Ward 1? What's important? What are the issues? What are people concerned about? What do you want to change or make better?
Yeah, so I want to, like I said, I want to bring good public service back to the residents of Ward 1, not just Ward 1, but all of Quincy. And I think that starts with listening. When you attend zoning board meetings, if you attend not so much city council meetings, but zoning board meetings, like they're not listening, or the people who are in the room don't feel listened to. A lot of times they're spoken to, talked down to by the members of the board, right? I have been also spoken down to by the members of the board. It's not a good feeling. People, it's a forum, for residents, to go and attend a meeting. I'll never forget How Many Scoops, which was an ice cream shop, like right across from the fire station. I got an invitation to come and speak because I live within 150 feet of there. And I got up to speak, and you get the invitation, and at the end, someone pulled me aside, like, who are you to say this, that, or the other thing? And I was actually speaking in favor. They wanted to build a new building there. And I was actually speaking in favor of the project, but it's like, I got an invitation to come and speak here. You know what I mean? So it kind of gives you not a great feeling.
Okay.
But there's a lot of development going on. I'm not opposed to development.
Okay.
But I think it needs to be smart development. It needs to be within reason. One of the developments going on right now was the China Star, or the Imperial Terrace.
Yes.
That was kind of a heated issue. The residents in Marymount really felt like they weren't being represented. I remember I went to a meeting, and I don't remember the gentleman who spoke, but he basically got up and said, "Are you people here representing us, or are you representing the developers?" That's was on the city. And that's like the feeling that people have.
Is that what you're hearing as you're outdoor knocking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting things. There's things that you don't necessarily expect. I mean, I knocked a door a couple of weeks ago. It was a younger couple, probably actually maybe a little younger than me. and their biggest concern was, when are we getting a hospital? And I don't want to say that surprised me, but because they were younger, I was kind of a little surprised that like that was their number one, issue. But I don't know what their health concerns are,
Sure.
But and running for Ward 1 councilor, just running for councilor, I have no idea how you would even start that. But in just engaging them in conversation, I said that to them. I was like, that is a really big issue, and more than I think any counselor could really just tackle. And just through talking to them, they understand that we don't have a hospital now, but they want to see a plan for how we could have one.
Okay.
What is, I don't want to say it's a contingency plan, but Quincy Hospital failed for a lot of different reasons, right? It's an old building. My great grandmother worked there. You know what I mean? My grandmother worked there. My mother worked there.
Sure.
So, they talk about the infrastructure, how it was not, done correctly. The new building, all the infrastructure was tied to the old building, and it wasn't, but it was also not really near the highway. It was kind of I remember working at the Adams house. You'd be sitting on the front porch giving a tour, ambulances going by, it was it was a little distracting. But we're in Ward 4, they're talking about I think some rezoning for like the Crown Colony
Yes.
area, and I don't know exactly what they want to do, like some residence type stuff.
It's like
over
a
there.
transit-oriented development.
Yeah,
plan.
and that sounds good, but you know what? If we ever want to have another hospital, we might want to think, could that be a good area? Should we maybe set aside some space there because it's right near the highway? You could there's basically an off ramp right there. Would that in the future, it might not attract somebody now, but in the future, might that attract somebody? And if we build something there now, are we locking ourselves out for utilizing some of that space?
Okay.
So.
So, ward councilor, people not being heard, how would you hear people, Dave, as Ward 1 councilor?
So I'm going to host office hours. I don't I think I hear people say that, and I don't know what that looks like. They'll say maybe it's like a Dunkin' Donuts. What I do, I live at the end of a dead end street, and I have a rocking chair that I sit out in front of my house, and my neighbors walk by, and I talk to them. And I have a picnic table out on my front lawn, and my neighbors must think like, why does this guy have a picnic table out on his front lawn? It's because we live on a dead end street, and my kids want to ride their bike on the street. But our neighbors that live next door to us, our kids are the same age, and we'll come and sit at my picnic table.
Okay.
With us. This is my address. Like, I'm going to have a Google Calendar where I'm going to have hours that people can just sign up. Just like a sign-up genius type thing. I'm going to say, every Thursday night, I'm going to set aside 3 hours, 30-minute increments or whatever, six, and you can just sign up. And you want me to come to your house? I will sit in your living room. I've done that already. I've sat in backyards in Marymount and Adams Shore, right? If you want to come to my house and sit at my picnic table with me, we can certainly do that. And
Okay.
I think that that's what that looks like.
Okay.
I don't think that that's happening right now, as it should.
Did you want to comment on some of the issues of the city right now?
Sure.
The raises, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the process that
So
went through?
I want to start off by saying I 100% believe that the mayor and the city councilors deserve a raise.
Okay.
That is number one. I don't think there's anyone out there that actually thinks the opposite of that. I do think the raises are a little high, especially for mayor. I think that that's way too high. A 79% raise, that's a lot. I don't get 79%. If I go back over the last 10, I didn't get a 79% pay increase over the last 10 years. I do agree with the Fair Raises group. I know that they're putting out a petition, and I have collected signatures for that. My porch is a spot where 10 Charles Street. You can certainly sign the petition there. But like I said, I do believe that both deserve a pay raise. Like I said, 79% is too high. The ward councilors, and the councilors at large, it's obviously not as high as the mayor. While I was collecting the signatures back last year, I did find that more people were upset about the mayor raise, and they were like, the city council, that didn't seem to bother. I think it has to do more with the number than the percent, you know what I mean, than the percentage.
Do you have a number you think is appropriate?
Well, I do, myself personally, I think that the elected officials should get what the city union employees get.
Okay.
If it's good enough for their workers, it's good enough for them.
Okay.
Yeah. I think anything more than that is unfair. We know the world is not fair, but if that's what we're giving, if we're giving a DPW worker 3, 3, and 3, and we're giving the teachers 3, 3, and 3, we're giving the police 3, 3, and 3, why does the mayor and the city council get 79%,
Okay.
50, 48%, whatever
Okay.
it is. So I know that I know the group right now has, I think it's 183,000.
Yes.
That's like that would be if it was like 2% over that last 10 years.
Yes.
Myself, I'll go with that because that's what
Okay.
they're coming up with. But myself personally, I feel like they shouldn't get more than what they're giving the workers.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Another issue right in Ward 1, actually, the new public safety complex is
Yeah.
the statue issue.
Well, so first off, public safety complex, 100% we needed that
Okay.
building. I think sometimes there's this thing out there where it's like if you're opposed to one thing, back then it was about the copper roof, and people had some concerns about that, and it's like you're against this building. My great grandfather worked in that building. Back in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s.
Oh, the original building.
Yeah, my twin brother works in that building right now. He's
Okay.
a 911 operator. So just the idea that somebody in your family was working in that building in the 30s and somebody in your family is working in that building in the 20s, that tells you something's probably not right.
Right.
But I do think there were some things we could have done to save money on that project. I think the way you build things says a lot about what your values are. I value a good-looking building too, but I value a building that's 100% environmentally friendly. And I know there were some more things we could have done had we not put on a copper and slate roof. There were some more environmentally friendly things we could have done.
Okay.
But not opposed to the project. I think the building looks great. Really looking forward to it coming online, especially since sometimes my brother will say, "Hey, can you drop me off my lunch at 9 o'clock at night?" And you pull it into the parking lot and it's about this big.
Yes.
It's tough in there right now. And I have to say the city workers who work in that building have, they put up with a lot. Yes, as all the workers in any of the buildings, the schools that have been redone over the years, it can add time onto your day trying to get a spot to park.
Yeah.
But I am opposed, to the statues.
Okay.
Primarily because of the way it was handled. In Quincy, there's a lot of beautiful things that happen, but it happens behind a cloak. I remember when we didn't see those statues, we didn't know about that. I have a feeling if we had known about that, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I don't think that ever would have happened. I do think something should go there, but I think it needs more community input, especially on a building that we just spent $340 million on, and we're spending $1 million on statues. I just don't understand how something like that could happen without any type of community input. I know that the mayor and the director of operations think that that's okay, but I think that the citizens of Quincy would disagree with that.
Okay. All right. Any other ward-specific issues you want to talk about? I know getting in and out of House Neck is always a concern for sure.
I will say this. Getting in and out of House Neck, I get in and out of House Neck. I leave at 6 a.m. So I'm getting out of there pretty early. I do hear about it or see it online afterwards, especially with all the construction going on. I will say this about C Street. It's not in great shape right now, but we all know that this is how it goes. We've been through this enough. I will say this, much to the credit of the current administration and obviously the contractors who are actually the ones doing the work on the ground. C Street, in the deplorable condition that it currently is far better than Newport Ave or any of those other streets were during their lowest point. So kudos to the contractors. Could it be better? Always could be.
Sure.
But it certainly could have been a lot worse.
Okay. All right. Flooding is another main concern on the neck, right?
Yeah.
Has that been addressed adequately, do you think?
It's tough. Flooding is a tough situation. So, a couple of years ago, they started seawall repair. in Marymount, and they came down to Adams Shore, and I think it stopped like just by like the Howe's Neck sign. That's where it stops. Yeah, that was phase 1. So now we're in phase 2. Only thing I know about phase 2 is what I've seen on Facebook or other social media sites, and that phase 2 is beginning. And that's what most of the people in Howe's Neck know. Okay. That phase 2 is beginning.
So it sounds like communication is an issue.
It is low. I mean, I can tell you, as someone who's involved in this race, involved in the community, that's all I can tell you is that it's starting. Also, in regards to C Street, I see the work going on. It's looking, like it's getting done, but I also couldn't tell you when they're actually planned to pave it.
Okay.
So we don't actually know that. I mean, I would imagine it's probably not this year, because usually they like to have those trenches settle for a winter. So if I had to guess, I would say it's probably next spring. But the fact that we don't know that, or have like this is what the timetable is, maybe in 6 months, they're like, actually, you know what, we're going to pave it in the fall. There's no timetable that's at least publicly available.
Okay.
To us. So that is also, a problem.
Okay. When it comes to money, Dave's finances, spending, how would you kind of define yourself?
So I'm very financially conservative.
Okay.
I am also, I consider myself very lucky. My wife and I own our house, no mortgage, so just the taxes. And my wife actually said to me whenever the last tax bill was, and she didn't grow up in Quincy, she grew up in Boston. And she actually said to me, she pays the taxes, I pay for the food and the utility bills, she goes, wow, the taxes are really high here. And we're both teachers, and I'm not saying we make a lot of money, but we do well. And we don't have a mortgage. I drive a 15-year-old car, she drives a 14-year-old car. We send our kids, our kids went to private, like preschool, in daycare. That costs us about $33,000 a year. I know it seems like one of those things I remember I would hear parents say, I'm like, there's no way it costs that much. It costs that much. And I look around at my neighbors, the kids I grew up with, and the people that live just right next door to me. And I'm like, people live right next door to me, they're both teachers. I grew up with the girl who lives next door to me, she's a couple of years younger than me. And so we're living kind of parallel lives, it's very similar. And I'm like, how are they doing it? I'm sure they have I'm sure they do have a mortgage, right? But it's like, my wife and I are just barely getting by. And I'm like, how are these people actually paying a mortgage? How are they actually doing it? They have 3 kids, they're putting in daycare. I don't know how people do it. But, I like to think that, again, fiscal conservative. When we paid off our house, we could have sold it and bought a bigger house, but I like to live within my means, right? We're putting solar panels on. We could have financed those. My wife and I saved, for a couple of years. We just put a new roof on the house the other day. Solar panels are coming on August 12th. We paid for all of that, in cash. So, or up front, because that's how we operate. So again, I would say fiscally conservative.
Okay, so as a counselor, that's how you would address the budget.
Yeah. I think there's always ways to save money. Granted, we want things to look good, and they should look good, but we do need to look at ways, is this something that we need to finance? Or is this something that we can do in different phases and use the money as it comes in? Or should we set an account up for this? And this is something that we're looking at doing, we want this in the ground in 10 years, and we can put money aside in this account for 10 years. Okay. And I think we need to start doing more of that.
Okay. Going forward for the campaign, what's the game plan?
The game plan is we're knocking those doors.
Okay.
I've done the whole city,
yep.
So this is just Ward 1. Ward 1 is land-wise pretty big. Ward 1 is one of the wards that's getting bigger as the census goes on.
We're sitting in Ward 1 right now, actually.
Right. Not always. Well, I think this actually was,
yes.
At least in my lifetime. Yeah. But as the other wards get more densely populated, they're getting smaller. Like Ward 2 is getting smaller, but Ward 1 is taking up portions of Ward 2 in the last 2 censuses. So it's getting bigger. And that has to do with, in Ward 1, it's mostly single-family residences. When my parents were kids, there were 5, 6, 7 kids. Now there's 2. So you got less people living in those houses. So that makes the ward actually bigger. So, sure. And it's interesting, when I door knocked in the Quincy Center, Quincy Point part of Ward 1. And a lot of the people don't even understand like why. They're like, oh, I live in Quincy Point, like why are, you're from Housing. And I just try to tell them like, you are getting more densely populated, and they know it. Like, when you tell them that, they're like, yeah, like there's this one guy I spoke to on Mill Street, and he was telling me he lived in the house for like 20 years. And he's got to be the only single family house left on the street. He's probably 2 or 3 houses in from Washington. And, all around him is townhouses. And I'm not saying they're not great. He wasn't even saying they weren't there. He's just saying it's like, he's like, yeah, it's obviously getting more densely populated. Here, where I live, that doesn't happen.
Right.
So at least not yet.
Okay. Campaign website for you, Dave?
Yeah, it's Jacobs for Quincy.
FOR?
.com. Yeah, FOI.
Okay.
Jacobs for Quincy, and that's Jacobs with an S.
Okay, forquincy.com.
.com, yeah.
Okay, very good. Anything else you'd like to share with folks?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks for coming by. We'll see you on the ballot on November 4th, right?
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for watching us here at AM Quincy. I'm Joe Catalano, and we'll see you